But yeah, she.
All right. Oh. Coming up. Here we go. Okay, well, in case you haven't guessed, this is a suit of armor from a Polish. They were called Hussars in the 17th century. They wouldn't let me wear my swords today. I asked. They said no. But normally I'd have a sword here and maybe a couple of pistols in my boots and whatnot. And what they were is these were the elite soldiers, the elite cavalry. They would dress like this just before battle. They would all line up at the top of a hill, and they would watch the infantry get slaughtered. And they'd watch the lesser cavalry get slaughtered. And when the battle was almost over, they'd go in and fight and finish everybody off. The first question everybody asks is, what are the wings for? Really, nobody knows. There's a bunch of theories that they prevent you from being lassoed, or they prevent you from sword cuts. They protect you from sword cuts. Some people think they scare the other horses, which is probably true. Horses, I don't know if anybody has horses, but they're very skittish whenever they're exposed to something new. And so, these other guys, the Turks or the Russians or the Germans or whoever, would be fighting the Poles, and then these guys would come up with these wings and the leopard skins, and it would freak the other horses out. So while these guys are trying to control their horses, I'm coming up with my saber and slashing at them. So that's the theory I tend to believe. And the other one is they just look cool. Oh, I forgot. I have a bunch of books here. I can just you guys, if you want to, glance through them while I'm talking, I can do that. I'll just pass them out at random. This one is fun. I'm actually on the cover of this one. Different. Most of these have pictures of Polish hussars in them and different explanations of things.
Can they tell who you are on this?
You got a
Okay.
Yeah, I have a mustache. I'm in the blue. No, this is me right here in the blue. There's a bunch of pictures of me in the book too, but you don't need those to see what I look like. The hussars, the guys who went into battle like this, were generally the wealthiest landowners, and that's why they waited until the very end of the battle, because they were too important to get killed. I don't remember the first day of class. I was talking about skis. That's the SKI at the end of the last name. Most of them had that at the end of the name. And what ski means in Polish, if you're named something ski, it means it's a place name beforehand, like Ashwaubenon or Swamakowski or something. If it was in this area. And what that means is that you actually own that village, and you collect the rents from that village, and you collect 10% of their crop or whatever, and you use that to fund your battles, because these guys would have war horses, and a war horse back then was very expensive, probably the equivalent of driving a Mercedes today, except they had 3 or 4 of them. And then they had men-at-arms. They had infantry that they were responsible for armoring and giving them weapons and clothing them and all that. And then they had, on top of that, they had servants to polish the armor and to take care of the horses. So if I was to go into battle, I would be responsible for myself and my 4 spare horses and my 3 men-at-arms and my half a dozen servants, and I'd have to feed and clothe, and it was a very expensive undertaking, which is why they had all this gaudy stuff on. They said, hey, look at me, I'm wealthy enough to actually be able to do this. So of course most of the soldiers were not nearly so well dressed. Dr. Coates, do you have my paper? I kind of ran out of ideas here. Thanks, Josh. Let's see, what else did I talk about? Oh, so generally, they would go into battle. Like I said, they were always on horseback. They were cavalry soldiers. They would have their chief weapon was a lance, about 5 meters long. It was hollow, and it was actually very light. It probably only weighed 4 to 4.5 pounds, and about 5 meters long. I don't know if I said that. And what they would do is they would charge in formation. And they'd all lower their lances at the same time, and try to skewer the bad guys. And it's actually kind of a funny thing. You read in contemporary accounts how if someone would go into battle and their lance wouldn't break, no, you're a sissy. There's a story of a guy who actually skewered 3 Turks, I think 3 Turkish soldiers on his lance, and his lance didn't break, and everybody was making fun of him. And then they had, like I said, the saber, which was a curved sword about 3 feet long. They would have that. You can see this in some of these pictures, in some of these books. In Polish, it's called a szabla, and that was they would wear it almost like jewelry. Everywhere they went, they had this sword. And they probably didn't use that one in battle too much. It was kind of a backup weapon. But anyway, after they charged through and shattered the lance, they would have a couple of pistols, like tucked and tied in the boots or in the saddles. They carry 2 or 4 or 6. They're all single-shot pistols back then, usually wheel locks, which is the same principle as like a big lighter. Once the lance started, they draw those, they shoot them, they drop them, and then they keep riding all the way through. And then what they do is they pulled out a long sword called a concierge. It was basically a very long, freakishly long blade, like 5 feet long, 4.5 feet long. Usually square in section. It was not sharp at all, but it was very pointy. So then they would use it like a miniature lance, and as they were coming back, they'd try to stab people with this thing. And usually had a second sword tucked under the saddle, under their thigh here, so they could just pull it out if they needed it. I could talk, if you wanted me to, I could talk about the different parts of the armor and what they're called in Polish. The helmet here, this is called a shishak. This one's actually pretty fancy. Most of them didn't have the big crest on it. They all had this face guard, and that was because you don't want people chopping you in the face. In English, this is called a gorget. It's actually, I think it's a French word, but we use it in English too. In Polish, it's called an obojcik. In English, these are pauldrons. In Polish, they're called ramionik. Of course, the upper arm defenses, they're very flexible. They're steel, of course, but they give me full freedom of movement, which is kind of nice. These are vambraces, or karvasha. And the breastplate is called a napirsnik. The back plate is called a napichnik. And the wings, I can never pronounce this word. They're called shkizhidwa. It's a very hard word. There's no vowels in it.
Write
it down.
Yeah.
That's the word for wings in Polish. The L with the slash through it is pronounced like a W. So it's shkizhidwa.
Keep going down. You stopped up here, so.
Oh, I wasn't done.
Oh, okay.
Underneath, I'm wearing something called a jupan. I don't know if you remember me talking about the first day of class. I tailor. I make clothing. I made this. I make a bunch of these for my friends. This one is made of linen. It's very light, breathes pretty well. It's got a linen lining too. And then on the top, you can't see it, but I have channels sewn in, and then I have hemp cord in there for padding. Because if you use cotton batting, eventually it will compress, and then sweat degrades it. But hemp doesn't. It's a hemp rope that's twisted. It's 1/4 inch hemp, and then you just